with the fast-moving news about the fire and all the work that was going into that, we decided that it was not a good night to do a town hall. But I'm very pleased this evening to have some of the heroes that have been working this fire. Chief Ian Larkin, although he can only be here briefly, Incident Commander from the Sheriff's Office, Chris Clark, as well as Central Fire Interim Chief John Walbridge, who was one of the responding agencies. Tonight, we're going to talk about what's happened in the fire, to give you up-to-date information about everything that's gone on, to also talk about what the mutual aid situation has been like and how its impact in the Mid-County area, and just what people can do to be safe. You know, we know that with climate change, that we're going to be facing more severe weather events. Right now, we are seeing a historic fire that was caused by extraordinary weather. And so this is what we have to fear in the future, and this is why we're working so hard to prepare for climate change and adapt here in Santa Cruz County. Next week, I'm going to have on a couple of speakers talking about sea level rise and the county's policies to prepare for sea level rise, because while we think about wildfires, we also have to think about the coast, because here in Santa Cruz County, we're vulnerable in two major ways to climate change. So I hope you'll join me next week when I have a couple of speakers talking about that and our new policy. Tonight we have Santa Cruz County Fire Chief and CAL FIRE Fire Chief of the San Mateo, Santa Cruz County area, Chief Ian Larkin. Chief Larkin has been a great supporter of wildfire prevention, and I want to personally thank Chief Larkin and CAL FIRE for their help up in the Summit area with a demonstration project for a shaded fuel break at Loma Prieta School that was done this spring, and has served as a great resource for the community as we work on a larger shaded fuel break project that we hope to seek funding for and be able to start maybe as early as next year. Chris Clark from the Sheriff's Office has been on before. You know him as a very able and articulate speaker, and he has been the face of the Sheriff's Office for this, serving as the Incident Commander. He has helped organize not only the 150 plus members of the Sheriff's Office that have been involved, but the hundreds of other law enforcement professionals who have come to our aid. Interim Chief John Walbridge is here tonight from Central Fire. In the early parts of this fire, it was our local fire districts which played a key role, and Central Fire was right there on the fire line. And I want him to talk about what that experience was like, and also to talk about what is going on in the Central Fire District to prepare with that wildland urban interface that we see in the first district. We're going to be taking your questions. You can use the Q&A function that's at the bottom. We may not get to all the questions. We will. I know there's going to be more community meetings around this. And I just ask for everybody to be respectful of the hard work that these guys have put in. They've been on the fire lines and working to protect our community for hours on end for the last 11 days. And I appreciate that they took time to be here tonight. Chief Larkin, if you could just start, I thank you for being here, even if for a short time. Just give us what happened in this fire and what's going on with this fire.
Yeah, so just a brief update. So on last Sunday, we experienced in the early morning hours a significant weather event that came into our region with dry lightning. It was part of that weather event. As a remnants of that, it caused 22 lightning type fires throughout Santa Cruz and San Mateo counties. That led to a couple different events. Numerous fires. We had a local drawdown of resources to try to mitigate those fires. We had enacted our lightning activity plan for our unit. We had broke our unit into several different zones within the unit in order to get resources to help the eyes on the fire and to determine the severity of those fires. Due to the remote location of the vast majority of the fires that we had, and difficult access into those, it took a considerable amount of time to get folks in on those fires. And once we did, literally folks were having to cut their way in through the timber and brush into the areas to get to the fire to be able to get a good size up on the fire so we could get adequate resources, or what appeared to be adequate resources, to combat those. Fires, obviously, due to the drawdown throughout the statewide, this system brought in approximately 300 fires across the state, which rapidly depleted our robust mutual aid system throughout the state. So resources became very scarce, and which turned into a very difficult situation for us because we did not have the adequate resources at the time to adequately staff our fires. And some fires went unchecked for many days for the fact that we had to concentrate on the ones that we felt that were the most important to mitigate the potential for threat. A few days later, we had a wind event come through. Our fires had grown to somewhere in a total acreage of over 3,900 acres, and still had inadequate resources to combat the fires. As a result of that, there was a wind event that came through and basically took a ground fire that was burning in the canopy, or not in the canopy, in the understory, and brought that fire up into the canopy, creating a volatile situation where it was casting embers well in front of the active fire, upwards of 6 miles in advance of that moving fire. So that created a very volatile process in which we had to make some very drastic decisions, and we were getting spot fires into Boulder Creek at the upper end of Highway 236 near Big Basin. So based on that situation, in cooperation in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, we did a wide area evacuation using a zone-based evacuation process that we have established in this county, which I have to say worked very well. It was a systematic approach to get people out of harm's way in the advance of a fast-moving fire. And just in relation to how fast this fire moved, as I stated, day 3, we had about 3,900 acres. And that evening of day 3, that fire expanded 44,000 acres in that advancement in that single 24-hour period in that progression. Those are from those spot fires and the wind event that occurred that pushed that fire south into Santa Cruz County, into the communities of Boulder Creek and Bonnie Doon, as well as the upper end of Ben Lomond. So currently today, the fire stands at 81,137 acres, is currently 21% contained. We still remain to have 24,323 structures threatened. We have confirmed through our damage inspection process that we have 590 structures destroyed. And of that, 11 of those structures are in San Mateo County. The remainder are in Santa Cruz County. The damage inspection process is about 55% complete based on the fire perimeter area. We're working very hard to try to clear roadways and make it safe for those damage inspection teams and fire personnel to get into these areas to cool off hotspots so it's safe for them to go in and continue their damage inspection. To date, we have 77,832 citizens that are evacuated in the fire area. And to date, we have 1,982 personnel on the fire. And just for a relevance to a fire of this size and magnitude, normally we would have anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 personnel on this fire in order to contain it. We're well below half of that now. So we are still at a limited number of resources. We are allocating those resources based on the greatest need and trying to protect the communities and contain this as quickly as we possibly can. And we'll continue to do that throughout. We'll still continue to get resources in and allocate those. Just today, we got an additional 300 personnel in, mainly our hand crew type resources so that we get in and cut the line out between the communities of Boulder Creek and Felton at the lower end there to contain that and to keep it west of Highway 9. And I know Chief Deputy Clark will talk more about evacuations and that process. So that's my update on the fire. I apologize for not being able to stay longer, but that's my update.
Chief, I just want to express the appreciation. We've already gotten a couple questions that have lots of appreciation for the work that's been done. I just appreciate everything you've done to help get us ready to be able to respond in a way that none of us would want, which is you can't get the extra resources, but you've done a great job, and the community is appreciative of the work that you and all of CAL FIRE has done for Santa Cruz community. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Chief Deputy Clark, I think this is a great time for you to talk about sort of what does the law enforcement piece look like?
Yeah, so the law enforcement piece for us is, you know, this started last Tuesday, and just as everybody knows, at least in our county for us and for the folks within the San Lorenzo Valley. And, you know, frankly, we anticipated potentially a wildfire, you know, but thinking that we were going to have this kind of event, the scope of these evacuations, it just, you know, it's mind-boggling to think that that many people evacuated. But nonetheless, you know, frankly, I'm proud of our staff. We you know, I got a call that night, started with a call from CAL FIRE, and then a conversation. I responded with my management team over to CAL FIRE's headquarters, met with Chief Larkin, and kind of things just took off from there. And so, you know, the lessons learned in the Paradise Fire incident with regards to limited roads and being able to get in and get out and get people out in a systematic and efficient fashion, all of that played a part in recognizing that, okay, yes, there's fire in the county. Yes, we need to evacuate folks. Yes, we need to get them out of the area, and we got to do it in a way so that nobody gets, you know, clogged. The roads don't get clogged, and we get people caught on Highway 9, 236, Highway 1, and all these roads that lead in and out of those areas. So, you know, those evacuations were timed. We went systematically from the areas closest to the fire, and then literally every 4 minutes launched additional evacuations to get people out. And frankly, I think that that proved fairly that proved fairly successful in terms of, you know, granted, you know, this fire's cost somebody their life, and that's you know, that we want, as the sheriff has said, one's too many. But given the magnitude of all the people that evacuated out of the area from starting Tuesday evening all the way in through the next 2 days following that, was pretty remarkable. But so that was the kind of how it started for us, the evacuation process obviously being our top priority. And then once we felt like we did all the evacuations that we needed to do, we kind of shift gears to a certain extent. So and so our mission now was not only monitoring the fire to continue to see whether or not we needed to do additional evacuations, but at the same time hold down that area and provide security for people's homes. And at the same time, if there's somebody that needed help or needed checking on or that sort of thing, we were there to do that. And so and really trying to give people a peace of mind. I mean, and I've said this before, that we have people, our own staff that live in that area, and you know, we're part of that community. We're part of the San Lorenzo Valley, and so you know, for us, it's making sure that, you know, if you've left your house, you know, we want you to feel good to know that we're there. And so but that mission, that task of securing that area, it's for one, we don't have this, we don't have the staff to do it, and so I can't say, I literally can't give more appreciation to our local law enforcement partners here in the county, as well as mutual aid that we got from agencies over the hill. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. You know, we're using those folks literally to saturate the whole valley, to look for people that are potentially wanting to prey on folks while they're gone. And you know, it's crazy to think that there's people out there that would do that, but it's unfortunately, it's not unique. When you evacuate an area, that you might have somebody that wants to take advantage of it. So, you know, where typically we would have, you know, 2 to 3 deputies in the valley in that area, tonight we're going to have 70, or I'm sorry, 60. And so we've continued to hover around that number, 60 to 70 officers and deputies throughout the valley. I heard a question once is, you know, are they bumping into one another? No, they're not. And frankly, you want them there, because where before we were reliant on 42,000 people that see activity and report activity, we don't necessarily have that. So having that increased police presence allows us to be able to look and identify whether or not people are doing the wrong thing, and then going from there. And unfortunately, we have made arrests, and we've cited people, but it's in the spirit of protecting homes, and then at the same time making sure that CAL FIRE has the room to be able to get the job done here, and allow, even as we speak, them to put out the fire, PG&E to repair the lines, county roads and Caltrans to repair the roadways, because all that stuff is in bad shape up there. So and so that mission continues today, security, but at the same time now we're talking about repopulation. And so kind of in the inverse, where we were evacuating people in a systematic fashion to get them out, now we're doing that in reverse, in the sense that systematically trying to get people back in, but at the same time, there's areas where the fire is still actively burning. They're still trying to create fire line. They're still trying to do work. So it's kind of, at this point, our repopulation plans are built around going from the least affected area to the more affected areas. And obviously, as you get closer to the fire, the infrastructure is more heavily damaged. Roads are in worse shape. So all that stuff has to be done to be able to better protect and support life in those areas when people get back. So as I mentioned tonight at an earlier press conference that we had at 6, I know people really my heart goes out to people that have evacuated. Now, personally, I didn't have to, but I can't imagine. I've got a family and 3 boys. I can't imagine in the middle of the night getting all my stuff together after receiving a text or checking code red or watching the news that I needed to, or checking CAL FIRE's website. I need to leave. So I can't imagine packing all my stuff in the middle of the night and having to evacuate. And now here I am trying to do my work, whether it's virtual or in this COVID environment, and then wonder, okay, how am I going to pay for this hotel room? Can I find a hotel room, right? Is there shelter space if I had animals or pets? I mean, these are all hurdles to that process a little bit, but the county has done a phenomenal job of setting up shelter sites, and setting up areas for people to put RVs. The damage assessment map that the county has put together to give people the opportunity to know whether or not their homes have been damaged, destroyed, or that they're all right. And that list is growing by the day as CAL FIRE is able to get out and look at these places. And then just the resources that the county is, the free housing that the county, the program that the county put out, coming from the perspective of not only do people need shelter, but that sleeping outside isn't necessarily healthy because of the smoke. And so that comprehensive stuff, I really, to think we have this event, and it's a terrible event, but to look at government working, I think, for you in this regard is, that's why we live here. That's why we live in this county. We've got people that care. We got people that want to do, what's right in these types of situations. And I honestly, I couldn't speak more highly of our county, the people in positions to be able to make those decisions, to set up those processes. And then again, our staff out there, CAL FIRE working to put out the fire, Chief Larkin's leadership in that, and then our office in supporting that security, safety, and welfare aspect of what's going on now, and then repopulation. So just in total, there's a lot going on, and we understand that we want to get people back home, and the anxiety of wanting to get back home, and we want you to get there. And we're going to get there. And so, as I mentioned tonight, days to get back into Scotts Valley, and then it's days as you kind of move up that Highway 9 corridor as you get closer to those more heavily fire affected areas. And then towards Bonnie Doon, potentially weeks, is because the area is just, it's, the fire did, a lot of bad things in that area. And so there's a lot of work that still has to be done there. But we'll get there. We're going to get there, and there's a lot of people working hard. And like I said tonight, as CAL FIRE is putting out a fire, you've got PG&E trying to restore lines. You've got county roads trying to clear, Swanton and Last Chance and other North County, other areas where there's lots of trees down. And same with Bonnie Doon and other areas of the county. So just a lot going on. We want to get people home. A lot of people are working hard, and we completely empathize with people displaced. And again, I think our hearts just go out for folks right now. And the quicker we can get you back, that's our mission.
Well, thank you, Chief Deputy Clark. I just want to say that the Sheriff's Office has really stepped up in so many different ways. You were there when the COVID crisis started, and were out on the street and put officers on the streets to help residences and businesses. Obviously, we all suffered a terrible loss when Sergeant Gutzwiller was killed, and that was another example of mutual aid coming to benefit Santa Cruz County. And now to have this fire and the way in which the officers have stepped up, the way your leadership, the Sheriff Hart's leadership, and all the mutual aid that we've gotten to be able to support our community, especially when you have something like 23 major fires going on in California, to have that mutual aid, whether it comes from Alameda County, LA County, or even those firefighters that came from New Jersey to come help out. It's pretty amazing. I just wanted to ask you just a couple questions. Well, you brought up the shelters, and I just want to let people know that before the fire, the county was already running 10 shelters to address the needs of COVID-19 and housing 600 people who were homeless in order to avoid the spread of the virus. And in 1 week, we opened 13 more shelters for 1,400 people. And with the support of some of our cities, nonprofit organizations, but it's been really incredible to see the number of volunteers who have stepped up, and the shifts are filled through the volunteer center to see the donations that have come in. It's really the community coming together, and to get that support from outside, but just see the resilience of our community. It's really spectacular. You also mentioned the damage assessment website, and you just want to say a little bit more about that. It's a place where people can look to see what's going on in these fire affected communities.
Absolutely. So, people obviously want to know what your house looks like. Is my house in an area where it was damaged? And so, CAL FIRE is doing damage assessments on a daily basis. I mean, it's happening probably right now as we speak. And so that information gets populated into a map that the county has on their website. And that website's santacruzcounty.us/fire recovery/damage assessment map.aspx. If you go to that website, you can put in your address, and as I've been told, you'll be able to, it would show you whether or not your house is okay, damaged, or destroyed. And so that, again, it's a work in progress as CAL FIRE goes through and does more and more damage assessments. And so it's a resource to be able to, for folks out there to be able to look to get more information, so they could start potentially an insurance claim or that sort of thing, obviously, if they needed to.
Yeah, and just to make it easy for people, is if you just go to santacruzcounty.us, there's a link right there on the front page. If you didn't get all of the slashes and the ASPXs and everything, santacruzcounty.us, and you'll see it. It's right there on the front page of the website. Thank you for your work. I just want to turn it over to Interim Chief Walbridge. Your team was up there early on, one of the very first responders to this fire. What have you seen in terms of the response to this fire? And how is the system working of mutual aid?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Leopold. Appreciate the introduction. Really, I'm not going to go through the details like Chief Larkin did, because he did a really good job of kind of laying out the timeline. But we'll go ahead and start with the early morning hours of August 16th, when the dry lightning series did come through, and it did spark a number of fires. And while I think it's important for everybody to realize how unusual dry lightning of that type, and we're talking, anything above 500 confirmed strikes. And there's a map on various websites that will show you confirmed strikes. Most of the time you see them in the high Sierras on a daily basis in the summer, but Santa Cruz County has experienced these before. And it's happened about 4 times in my career. First time I was a seasonal firefighter, actually working for CAL FIRE, and then through the course of my career. What really is unusual about this is the extremely hot, dry weather that followed it in Santa Cruz County. I mean, obviously we're well known for having cool weather in the summer, and people flock to our beaches for that exact reason, right? It's nature's air conditioning. And so, but what followed this series, which was unusual, like I said, was the hot, dry weather, and then the northerly wind, which was dry. And then you combine that with really this storm system and this series of thunderheads was really statewide. And, you know, like I said, you know, we ended up with multiple fires in multiple regions of our state. And I'm not sure if Chief Larkin talked about it, but what also kind of enhanced our lack of resources, because we do share resources across state lines, is all the Western state partners had similar large fires going. So I think when you take out the western third of the United States as far as having a resource availability, you realize quickly that we're really in a kind of an unprecedented situation. Well, that term gets used fairly frequently in the COVID environment. It really applied here today. So like I said, back to the early morning hours of August 16th, you know, Central Fire, and I'm gonna, when I talk about numbers and what we're able to do as a local government, please understand that this is synonymous with all the local government agencies in Santa Cruz County. The numbers may change. And then when I specifically talk about our agency, I'm also including Aptos and Silva, because we're functioning together almost seamlessly at this point. So this isn't just Central Fire that I talk specifically about, it's also Aptos Fire, but we were able to push out 2 units and start a strike team. It was very early morning hours of Sunday morning. A strike team, for those of you that don't know, when I'm talking about fire apparatus, typically 5 vehicles, 5 fire engines, and then a leader. So we assisted in the effort then, and ultimately by the close of the second day of this incident, Central and Aptos were able to produce 6 staffed engines, 2 overhead to the effort, actually 3 overhead to the effort, which if you take the size of our staff, that's over 1/3 of our staff. And then you also have to understand that we also had 1/3 of our staff working in our stations. And so we are quickly north of 2/3 of our staff. And I say that because I'm extremely proud, just like Chief Deputy Clark is of his staff, I'm extremely proud of my staff because they really answered the call. Because I think all of us feel this, this time, this big fire, and I've been on other big fires, this time it's personal. It's our family, it's our friends, it's our neighbors, and it's our community. And so we're going to do the big lift, and we're going to push everything out the door that we possibly can. And I want that to also reflect, you know, what I'm stating across all the agency, whether it's law, whether it's public works, whether it's fire, that we all did that. We all sensed it and we all knew it. And so that's really the experience. At this point, I'm in a very, you know, I think a very beneficial position, or a very blessed position, that I'm supporting this incident. This incident is not affecting my fire district, other than we're continuing to support the effort because this county is a part of us and we're a part of this county. And so I think everybody's done a big lift. We're super proud of everybody. You know, I also wanted to talk about, and Chief Deputy Clark talked about it, really is those early hours of the incident before we got a command team in here, is that personal acknowledgement, recognition, and familiarity between all the players in this county. And really, I mean, in other counties I've operated in, is the relationships that we have in this county really facilitate the ultimate resolution of many of the incidents and issues that we've had in the past. And let's face it, 2020 has been really a challenging year. You know, I think there's a lot of us that are looking forward to the close of 2020 and looking forward to bring in 2021. And this has been huge, but I don't think would have had the successes that we've had without the relationships that we've fostered over the years. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think any of us care what color uniform we wear, what badge we happen to have on, or the patch on our shoulder. We really, whoever is having the emergency, whoever is having the incident, we're here to stand up and work together. And so you know, that's really kind of what I wanted to put out there as far as messaging. You know, and we're going to continue to support the effort to the best of our ability, because, you know, that's what we're going to do, and that's the right thing. And, you know, at that point, you know, at this point, I can move on to the next subject, Supervisor Leopold, or if there's any questions that you want to stop and ask.
Well, maybe just before we get to the questions, you could just say, what is, you know, we're very early in the fire season, and we've seen this tremendous fire. What's Central Fire doing to help us prepare? You know, we have lots of WUI areas, you know, the wildland urban interface areas. What are we doing to prepare for the height of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is an ongoing process. I mean, back in my early days, you know, in fire, and this is my 30th year now, You know, we talked about doing clearances around buildings, and the clearances were much more minimal as far as what was actually back then being recommended rather than enforced.
Right.
And now we're up to 100 feet or your property line, you know, and that's been going on for the last few years. And then as lessons from Santa Rosa and the Paradise, Butte County started to roll in, the state really has gotten involved, and we've got a lot more codes, a lot more fire codes involved. It's certainly regarding future development, but the current development we have is, you know, I think Chief Larkin, I know he talked about it, is the shaded fuel breaks, the funding and the grants that are coming in for those, as well as a lot of the programs that I know Fire Marshal DeMars, as well as Deputy Fire Marshal Mack are working on, the Ready, Set, Go program. And that's really, you know, we're looking at, you know, all the urban interface, because that's the wildland. We're talking about all those corridors that, you know, really need extra attention, you know, need the enforcement, need, you know, to get out there and educate the public. And that's really going to become the focus. And you're going to see that come around certainly starting this year. I think people have started seeing the messaging, and there's a lot of effort and a lot of state money and a lot of local money going into that effort to really prepare, you know, those folks that do live out in the wildland urban interface. And so, yeah, I think they're going to see changes. There's certainly a lot of messaging going on. We're going to be working with a community group tomorrow, actually, up by the Seventh-day Adventist camp, which is one of the shelters we talked about. Sure. In regard to that very message. And, you know, it's really just getting down on the personal level, working with our neighbors, our families, and our friends about how can we really, you know, prevent the foreseeable incidents, you know, and hopefully be better prepared for the unforeseeable or the really unusual things which we all witnessed in the last week and a half.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. I know that your fire marshals and assistant fire marshals have been out with neighborhoods in the 1st District, trying to help them become firewise communities and neighborhoods. So that's really neighbors getting together, taking very seriously the idea of protection, defensible space, hardening where possible. And those designations are going to be really helpful, especially as we talked just a couple weeks ago with the state insurance commissioner, that they're trying to get legislation that those kind of communities will get some benefit in their insurance in a way that we don't see that enough happen today. And people taking some responsibility and some leadership in their own neighborhoods can really make a big difference in a fire. I want to try to get to some of these questions that are here. Some of them we will answer the best of our ability. The first one here is from Mary, and she asked, what can be done in the future so we can get the resources needed immediately rather than waiting several days to put out the fire? I have some idea that, you know, we need to bolster our volunteer agencies, which is local folks, and that has been a big struggle over the years to make sure that all of our volunteer fire agencies are well staffed and well trained and have the equipment necessary, because they become a very important part. I'm not sure if there's any sense this is a pretty unique event that something happens across California at this size. Is there anything that you would add?
Yeah, I can certainly chime into that. I mean, it's, you know, firefighting is on a continuum. You know, everything from one engine crew can put out a small fire or even a larger fire that's moving slow, up to a fire that just is absolutely uncontrollable, no matter how many resources you have. I was at the Paradise Fire. I took 5 engines up there. I was there within the first hours of that fire starting. And I can promise you, along with some of the Southern California fires I've been involved in, there's nothing, you can have every resource in the world and you're not going to stop it. You know, so what does that say is, you know, what you said, Supervisor Leopold, is you got to work in advance of the incident or advance of the fire starting. And that means, you know, hardening your homes, hardening your protections, having the water systems in place, having the evacuation routes established, having the orderly evacuation in place, practiced and communicated, having, you know, the reverse 911 systems in place. I mean, the list goes on, but, you know, like I said, when those really unusual events happen that are not going to be controllable, you have to fall back on all those measures you put in place ahead of time. And that's really what's important here is, you know, a fire like this, it came up and it moved so fast that you're not even going to get every resource that you need, even if they're available within the state here in time because of travel time. And in this case, everybody had problems within every single region of the state, and you're just not going to get the resources. So, you know, I think that's really what we have to fall back on is we have to fall back on the preventive measures ahead of time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I really appreciate you bringing that up. And there are some times where Mother Nature is stronger than we are. And as I looked at the TV briefly today and heard about Hurricane Laura down in Louisiana and Texas, where they say, you know, this amazing surge of water that it's unsurvivable. You know, it doesn't make a difference what you put down there. You want to get out of the way rather than try to stop that powerful force. There's a question here from Karen. She says she really appreciates and loves the daily briefing and ops updates. And credit to you, Deputy Chief Clark, that they really are helpful. And she wants to know, can you please address what's happening at or near Div R&R? I'm not exactly sure what that is. I haven't heard it mentioned yet. Are there other homes and communities up Highway 9 from Boulder Creek and Ben Lomond that you're watching the fire closely? And I'm not sure if you know this in enough detail. I know that on the update today, they talked about it, and I encourage people to go to the CAL FIRE website or the YouTube channel or the Twitter page. There's a great deal of information there. I'm not sure if you know anything that you could share, Chris, about that.
Just that, you know, I know that somebody asked me a question about any fires east of Highway 9. I'm not aware of any fires east of Highway 9, nor, you know, there obviously the fire affected areas that are in that 236 kind of corridor between upper and lower 236 out to Big Basin, obviously fire affected areas there. But CAL FIRE again is doing everything they can to kind of to put that out. So there's a lot of resources that are in place to kind of to really stamp that out in those areas.
Sure. There's a question here more directed to me about our emergency services manager being eliminated at the end of the year. After an event like this, could that decision be revisited? It was when the county administrative officer had recommended the elimination of our emergency services manager position. The board didn't think that was a great idea to do, and this was Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, about a couple hours before the fire really broke out. And the board gave direction for the CAO to come back before the end of the year with a different funding plan because we recognize the importance of that. I will say that I was over at our Emergency Operations Center today, and it is amazing the work that's going on there. As you pointed out, Chris, there was a team from Public Works and Fire already working about how they're going to clear the roads and then restore the power and move people back in to make it safe as possible. There was a whole team working on that. There was a whole medical group that was working to make sure that we don't have a big increase of COVID at any of the shelters. It was a beehive of activity. And so we take this very seriously, and we're going to make sure we have the emergency services resources necessary, because we live in an area where if it's not fires, it's floods. If it's not floods, it's earthquakes. If it's not earthquakes, it's tsunami. That just happens here. So there's a question here from Amy. First of all, she says, thank you all. Can you please discuss what steps are being taken to streamline or expedite the permitting process to get destroyed homes rebuilt and our communities reunited as soon as possible? That's probably also a question for me. I want you to know that on Saturday, I was with Supervisor Coonerty. We talked about looking at Sonoma County, which for better or worse has gone through 2 calamitous fires in the last 2 years. And there's a colleague, Supervisor James Gore, who lost 5,000 homes 2 years ago in his district. And so he's become a national leader on resilient counties. And so I know that Supervisor Coonerty and Supervisor McPherson were on the phone with him and his staff today. I know that our staff has been looking to replicate what the successes that they've had up in Sonoma County. I know that we're already talking internally about what we can do. We went through a fire not as bad in 2008, where we lost a lot of homes, and we're looking to see what worked there to help expedite the process. And we also have the earthquake experience 30 years ago, where you had a lot of home damage at the same time, and you needed to move people in quickly. So we're trying to pull the best of those experiences I think in the coming weeks, you'll see at the board a lot of new programs to make sure that we can get people back into their homes as quickly as possible when it's safe for people to get back in. So this is a question from Joan. She says, my greatest concern is safe escape via Mountain Road, lying with horrendous amounts of dead trees, vegetation that have built up over the year. One large branch or tree blocking the road can prevent an escape. Is there any ordinance, or are we working on passing an ordinance requiring all property owners to remove dead or overhanging vegetation within a certain distance from the road in order to make the road more fire safe? Chief Walbridge, do you know of legislation that could be enacted or has been enacted in other places that the county could use to help clear roads like this?
Yeah, the only thing there's obviously public and private rights of way. If you're talking about a county road, a state highway, there's a requirement on either the Public Works or Caltrans or federal, if appropriate, to keep those roadways clear and safe to exit on. I think also a big component of what made this evacuation a success is what Chief Deputy Clark said regarding the orderly evacuation. I really saw no traffic jams out there, and in Paradise, as everyone's aware, was a mess. So we learned from that, and I think that this situation was certainly remedied by that, as far as having an orderly, well-timed, well-executed evacuation. And once again, I'm going to give a plug to CAL FIRE and the Sheriff's offices. Just an amazing amount of cooperation. There wasn't a question about whose jurisdiction it was. It wasn't a question about whose job it was. It was, we need to do this. And the Sheriff's office, immediately executed it in probably the best way I've seen to date. Certainly lessons learned and well executed. As far as the private roads, if you've got a homeowners association and that sort of thing, I'm not aware of any legislation that's coming forward, but that would certainly be a question. If you're able to email me or call me, it's on the Central FPD website. I can certainly reference that over to our CRR division, which is Community Risk Reduction. Also, it used to be Fire Prevention, to put it in context for everybody. So if you want to shoot me that email, you can certainly do it through our website. I'll get it over to CRR. We'll bring the question up because I just don't know the answer off the top of my head. But for public rights of way, those rights of way should be well taken care of. And if there's a question out there about something dead or hazardous, then that certainly can be forwarded to the jurisdiction having authority, i.e. county, state, or feds.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And if you don't know the chief's email, you could always send it to me. People can find my email pretty easily, john.leopold@santacruzcounty.us. I'll also put a plug in for the shaded fuel break project that we're doing along Summit Road, Highland. It's about a 5.5 mile project. It requires the support of 137 property owners. The Santa Cruz Mountain Alliance is working to contact all those property owners so we can get their okay. It makes us more competitive for the grant from the state. And I encourage people, if you live on that roadway, that you reach out to the Mountain Alliance, who has a Facebook page, Santa Cruz Mountain Alliance, in order to participate in that project, because that'll make a big difference. The other thing that I'll share is that on last Tuesday at our board meeting, we took action to redirect money which had been used down in East Cliff to improve scenic views and underground utilities. We moved that up to Old San Jose Road to underground the power poles there. And it does two things. It increases the reliability and it limits the danger that we have with power poles next to trees. And our goal is after the Summit shaded fuel break, then we'll work our way down Old San Jose Road. These are very expensive projects, so we have to do it in stages. But the power poles will be happening at the same time. And so we're trying to make our roads a lot safer, especially our primary evacuation routes. Chief Deputy Clark, this might be a question for you. They thank CAL FIRE for doing an amazing job, but they live along Highway 35, well away from the front lines, and they want to know when they'll be able to go back home.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I don't think we're far away from that. So it's just a matter of those lines being protected. I know it seems like, hey, you know, I live in a far reach of one of these zones, and why can't I get back home? Well, the repopulation kind of goes zone by zone, not necessarily street by street. So, you know, we know people want to get back home. I'd want to get back home too. And so I would just say, just bear with us as we kind of go through and work with CAL FIRE for them to be able to establish those lines to make that area safe. The Highway 35 area, I can't, you know, I would anticipate that happening over the coming, you know, days or weeks. I wish I could give you a specific answer, but it is, you know, we understand the concern, and we're working very closely with CAL FIRE to make sure those areas get repopulated as absolutely fast as safely possible to do so. I did want to touch on just something that Chief Walbridge said. You know, that collaboration and resources, collaboration and relationships within the county.
Sure.
We've got a relatively small county, but I think it's what makes it great, because we all work really well together, and you know, that those evacuations, you know, the collaboration, you know, here you've got Central Fire, and then the night of the evacuations were happening, it was our management team, Chief Larkin and Chief Heidick from Santa Cruz, and really that collaborative effort, I really couldn't speak more highly of Chief Heidick, Chief Larkin, CAL FIRE, and us in really working together on those evacuations. So I just wanted to kind of give a shout out really to Chief Heidick and Chief Larkin that night.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. It really makes a difference when everybody's working together, and we're a small enough community that there shouldn't be disagreements, and we should all be working together because it's really all one community. And following up on that, this is someone who's asking about Mount Charlie, Riva Ridge, Hutchinson Road. The fire seems very far away, and those roads are not being used by the fire department. No road damage, trees down, power lines. What's your sense about those roads, if you know?
Yeah, again, I would say it's more of the same. We are looking at that. I've got we have a management team that's focused on repopulation, going again from least affected to most affected. Really, it was the wait and see was it was the fire, really. We had that wind event, and then we got through that, and then how well contained does CAL FIRE have this fire before we go allowing people back into these areas? Because again, you know, the less area, the more area we give up, it could potentially cause us more problems, and really being able to give the resources devoted to the fire room to work. So, sure. And it places people potentially in danger. So I'd say we're getting there, and we're getting there fairly quickly. I think from here on, things will move a little more quickly than they have. At least folks can know that that's the focus now, is, you know, getting people back home.
Yeah, and the further away from the fire, the more likely that is.
That's exactly right.
Chief, this might be a question for the two of us. How can we extend the shaded fuel breaks program to other exit roads, such as North Rodeo Gulch? Have we ever thought about a shaded fuel break there? And is that something that we should be investigating to improve the safety along that road that falls within the Central Fire District?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of alluded to it, is, you know, that's, you know, part of the Ready, Set, Go program, you know, is actually guidance to the homeowners and what they can do, certainly to prepare and harden their homes. But as well as the shaded fuel breaks, you know, is based on funding, as well as cooperative effort. And I think Supervisor Leopold, you talked about it in regards to the mountain community along Summit Road. Is it really takes, you know, the neighbors within a certain drainage or a certain community in this case to get together, and there is funding available. It's just a matter of getting the community organized within itself, working with the local fire jurisdiction or local jurisdiction for, as far as the fire department goes, and then going ahead and getting the funding for that and then making it happen. I mean, I know, you know, how labor intensive the fuel breaks are. It takes a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of people. It's not a cheap endeavor, but what's really good news is there's money available. It just takes an organization willing to spearhead it, and working through the local fire jurisdiction. And, you know, the monies are getting allocated. You see it out there along Highway 17, along Summit Road, De La Viega area, right? It's happening. There's money.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of getting organized and, you know, within your own neighborhood, within your own street, you know, however however you want to make it work, and it's there.
Yeah, and I think I speak for the fire district. We'd be willing to meet with neighbors to talk about how to get into this program. Well, I met with the Summit area residents for we've been meeting, I think, for 7 months. We were able to, as we looked at it, we found this small project by the school that CAL FIRE had some resources, and the South Santa Clara Fire Safe Council had some resources. They're a very well-funded Fire Safe Council. But we are now working with the Santa Cruz County Fire Safe Council, and we could bring their resources in to bear on this. They've been very helpful in terms of writing the grant. They also run chipper programs and other places. I know that last year we had about 50 residents from Rodeo Gulch at Central Fire. The fire department's been super helpful there, and we stand ready to help out with people on that road as well.
Absolutely, and there's been a couple streets where we've had some successes as far as opening up fire department access, egress access on some of the feeder streets or some of the dead end streets off Rodeo Gulch. So Rodeo Gulch has benefited already from the Fire Safe Council. They've done some great work, and you know, as far as a shaded fuel break, that certainly can be on the bucket list of tasks to accomplish and goals to look at for sure. And I would highly recommend it because it you know, in light of us putting out the fires and our forest aging and building up dead and down and dead standing, we've got to mechanically or physically remove you know, what traditionally would have been done prior to, you know, recorded history, if you would, which isn't far back into the mid to late 1800s.
Sure. And one other thing that I'll just say is off of North Rodeo Gulch's Hidden Valley, over the past year, they came to me because they have a CSA, a county service area, that helps improve their road. And they had money and they were looking for a secondary exit. And they had a sort of a dirt path, a rock path that hasn't been well kept. And they wanted to use the resources from the CSA to make that road happen, or that secondary exit to happen. And the rules of the CSAs they can be fairly strict about where you can use the money. But working with residents, we were able to go to LAFCO and get changes made to the CSA that then allowed them to use the money. So it cost folks no more money, and they created this secondary access for their neighborhood. And so by working with us, we can figure out ways, if there are resources there, that we can tap them, or if we, on shaded fuel breaks, you really need the support of property owners, because that's what makes your grants competitive. There's another question from Celeste about would we consider controlled burns in the Rodeo Gulch area? Have we ever talked about that? Is that something we would do?
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, when you start looking at air quality standards, you know, we would never do one in the summer, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
You start looking at air quality standards, you also look at the risk. You got to wait for the right weather, you know, and you take, you know, something like Hidden Valley, Rodeo Gulch, and from the perspective of the urban interface, it's really densely populated.
Yeah.
You know, and it's in amongst what we call a lot of heavy fuels. And as you can see, heavy fuels, the fires don't move as quick as maybe some of the lighter flashy fuels that we've all witnessed in the Southern California Santa Anas. Sure. But the BTU output, or the energy output per acre, far exceeds, you know, in a heavy fuel environment like here, far exceeds the BTU, or the energy output in lighter flashy fuels like you see in Southern California. So, I mean, the bottom line is, you know, those are not advantageous areas to start fires because of the densely populated housing, the type of terrain that it's in, as well as the heavy fuels. So, you know, the mechanical, labor intensive means is really the only way that probably is effective without risking, you know, somebody's property in the long run.
So we can look at that. We can look at see what programs would work, but the burning is something you got to take very seriously. So we only have a few more minutes. Maybe one or two more questions. Mary asks, are there any low-cost loans available to help people pay for creating defensible space? Do you know of any, Chief?
I'm not aware of any, but you know, working through our local fire department and I'm sorry, the Fire Safe. Thank you, Fire Safe Council. They may have loans available, but you know, if you tackle it from the perspective of getting a set of neighbors together and looking at egresses and accesses and roadways and shaded fuel breaks, you might accomplish the same goal that you're looking for by tackling it from a community perspective rather than as an individual homeowner perspective.
Sure, and I know we're trying to build up. You know, I sought funding for. We used to have a bunch of small fire safe councils, and working with Supervisor McPherson, we provided money to them for the first time. And after a couple of years, we said we should really have one fire safe council, build up their resources. So we're trying to provide money, trying to help them help out communities building. It's part of the Resource Conservation District, which has had a great success in getting grant money. And so we're looking to build up those resources over the years, and they'll that way expand chipper programs, expand defensible space programs. Maybe this will be the last question I'll ask is, will there be an evaluation done at the end of this incident about what worked, what structures withstood fire, how did the evacuation work, that will help inform our future response? I don't know whether either one of you.
Absolutely. Every fire, there's what we call an after-action review. That after-action review, you know, from my perspective, being an operations person, really boils down to what we could have done better. But the subject of the question is, you know, really hardening of one's, you know, property as well as their home. And I think that you do see that. You've seen that come out of Paradise. You've seen it come out of Sonoma County. You've seen it. Really, it started in Southern California as far as how can we change what we do. I mean, if you think back way in the Wayback Machine, in the wildland urban interface, we did away with wood shingles, I want to say 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
You know, we did away with shingle siding 15 years ago. You know, and then, you know, we were talking about, well, we're only going to do 30 feet of clearance, you know, and it's going to be a recommendation. Now it's 100 feet of clearance and you will do it. You know, so you do see these lessons learned come up. I know the damage teams out there, they're not only recording the address, the APN number, they're also recording how that house was built, if they're, you know, how that house was positioned on the property. You know, was it, you know, did it look like it was, you know, a subject or exposed from the wildland environment or another house next door or a car? You know, a lot of these questions won't be answered per house, but you will see a trend when you start to look at, you know, the numerous structures that were lost. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think you will see lessons learned coming out of this fire, just like you've seen lessons learned come from every single fire. And sure, we will improve and we will get better. And, you know, we're humans and we're going to learn our lessons and move forward.
Right. Chief Clark, I'm not sure if there's anything to add on your end.
No, just echo what Chief Walbridge said. You know, obviously I don't have a whole lot of fire experience, but and not the expert in that field, but just you know, based on what I saw and what I see as I drive around, defensible space, it seems like it makes all the difference. I mean, the greater area you have to protect your home, it just, that's what it appeared to me. I mean, if you had, you know, wood piles, you know, literally, you know, that you're waiting for you to use them during the winter and they're close to your home. I mean, that's kind of what I saw. So the greater space around your house, that defensible space, that to me seemed to be a pretty remarkable deterrent for what, you know, houses stood and frankly what houses did.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just going to end with this from Jill. Said, like many of you, I have lived and worked in this community for decades, raised my kids here, and worked to create a strong community. Thank you, Chief Clark, Chief Walbridge, and all of your colleagues. And thank you to the folks at the county for being consummate, dedicated professionals, and also kind, empathetic people amidst these unimaginable circumstances. Our community is stronger because of first responders like you, and I just want to express the appreciation to you for your ongoing work. I know we're not at the end. We're just at maybe the end of the first phase, but we got a lot more phases, and you guys are going to be out there for weeks, if not months. I also want to thank everybody who has opened their homes to evacuees to help them find a place, to everybody who's volunteered at our shelters, who's donated either to the community foundation or come to the county Emmeline warehouse and donated food. The incredible number of volunteers, and I especially want to single out the young people that have come out. There are dozens of young people who put in hour after hour trying to help out their neighbors. And the person who says we have an apathetic younger generation is wrong. This year we have seen them be very active, stand up, and really make a difference. And so we stand with everybody who's been affected by these fires, and we're going to work hard as a team to ensure safety into the future through the rest of this season and forward way into the future. So thank you for your work. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll be back next week with Dan Hafley and a couple other speakers talking about sea level rise and the county's new policy to address that as one of our other issues of climate change. Thanks for being here. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, thank you as well. And I especially appreciate all the relationships that we do have in this county, because it does make a difference.
You got it.